It's 7 p.m, everybody. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Burnside Council. Please stand, as you already have. We acknowledge that this land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all those who reside, study, work in and visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. I welcome members to the gallery and ask them to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the City of Burnside. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound and you are asked to follow directions of Council staff. I need to remind all that Council meetings are live streamed through the City of Burnside website, and a copy of tonight's agenda is available by downloading from this website. I remind elected members of the importance of using their microphones appropriately so that those at home can hear clearly, and I request all in attendance switch their mobile phones off or onto silent. And we have apologies from Councillor Hubel, and we have a formal leave of absence from Councillors Dawes and Hughes. Could I have a motion to move the minutes, please? Councillor Davis, that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 25th of June 2019 be taken as read and confirmed. Seconded by Councillor Cornish. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Deputations, we have none. Petitions, we have none. We do have one person who wishes to ask a question in public question time. So would you like to come to the seat in front? I think you know the process. Just to remind you that you need to just state your name and suburb where you live, and there is a time limit that you're aware of and a bell will ring when you've got a minute to go. But I'm sure that you're already aware of those.
Not on? Yeah, all right, that might help. Ignorance is no excuse. But my question is regarding just a quick progress report on a couple of issues that a few ratepayers have asked me. One is the McGill Village. How's it going? When's it likely completed? A few people asked me, just a simple one. And also the Regal Picture Theatre. I was under the possible mistaken impression there were going to be some alterations subject to legislation made there in the near future. So just a couple of quick questions.
Okay. Can I refer those to Ms Kennedy?
Through the chair, I can take the second part of that in response to the Regal Theatre. So in the financial years past, we had the foyer repainted. We were due to have the carpet replaced in there as well, however we had a delay with delivery of that, so that's now looking like it will be end of July, start of August. We've also engaged some expert heritage architects to revise the conservation management plan for the Regal, and that will guide our future program of work, so that's started. In the coming financial year, we're looking at replacement of the seats will be the big ticker item for the coming year, so we're just starting to work on a specification for that with Heritage SA.
Thank you very much. And Aaron Schroeder, you're going to respond to the first part of the question.
Yep, through Chair. So McGill Village at the moment, the undergrounding works that have been done by SA Power Networks are about halfway complete and they're scheduled to be finished towards November. In terms of the road redevelopment, we've recently had DIPTI approval for the concept design and we're in the stages of finalising the detailed design for that one.
Can I just ask a subsequent question to that? At the Smart Cities project, there was some mention about devices being placed. Have they been placed in the McGill Village area yet? And it might be of interest to others to know what they are.
Through the chair, yes, they have. McGill Village and Tesmore Park both have their sensors. We actually just received the access to the dashboard about 2 days ago. So we're finally starting to see some data come through about pedestrian traffic in that area.
Thank you. I just thought it was really good for you all to hear what was happening in terms of that, because Smart Cities project is reported on in the CEO's report. But thank you, Tim, for asking those questions, and hopefully they answer yours too. Questions on notice, they have already been answered on the document that's provided to you. We have a series of motions on notice to move through, so I will start with the 10.1, and there is something that I have to read beforehand. I need to remind members that although this report is provided in the public, there are a number of previous reports and resolutions previously considered in confidence related to this matter. And if Council starts to discuss matters that have been retained in confidence, we will need to resolve to exclude the public and continue the debate as a confidential item. So, Councillor Piggott, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate those words. I'm sure that's true. That is the case. And look, I haven't got much to add in support of the motion beyond what I did put in the agenda papers. Members will remember that we did, as a result of the departure of our CEO, it was decided we should seek an interim person from outside the city's current administration. However, we are now sort of 5-6 weeks on in a different place, actually, and I think I'm certainly of the view that our interests are best served actually not to continue that search. I know some work has been done by the committee to do that, but my view is strongly that we should not continue that, and we should focus all our efforts on a permanent appointment of a Chief Executive Officer. And I'd seek your support on that motion.
Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. I thank Councillor Piggott for his motion on notice. I don't think I can add anything more. I know the position's been vacant now for about 5 weeks. The acting CEO has got the ship back on an even keel, so to speak, in my opinion. And I think we could continue along as we're going with the current acting group, with our executive all acting very well, and put all of our energies into the recruitment process, which we need to happen as soon as possible. So I hope you'll support this motion.
I have no one else who wishes to speak. Then I will put back to Councillor Piggott. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Jones.
Are we able to have a briefing from the committee? Because my fear is the timetable I've seen, realistically, you might not make an offer to a new CEO until the end of October, given the process you have to go through. You might then have someone who needs to give 6 months' notice. So we're talking about April, possibly May, until we get to a new CEO. My understanding is there is a profession of people called interim CEOs, and that's what they do. And we should be able to source one of those interim CEOs. So that's what I just want to get an update from the committee, because they're the people in the know.
I'm happy to respond to that. We did cast a net as instructed through the LGA, and there were a number of people that were approached, but most of them either had something else in line or had definitely retired and didn't want to come out of retirement. There were 3 names given to us One has since actually withdrawn that information, application anyway. The other two, it was deemed by the committee that they hadn't had a lot of experience as CEOs. They had done some acting roles, but they actually were not experienced CEOs. From the last committee meeting, I was instructed to go back to the LGA, which I did the following day, and asked them to cast the net further. But now and that is where it stands at the moment and I've taken no further action on that because I was awaiting the result of this motion tonight. I hope that I have covered everything for people who are committee here. If there's anything I needed to add.
Perhaps there's no actual list of interests.
There is no such thing as a list of. They certainly looked and tried in numerous ways and areas to find additional people, and in the week and a half since I asked them to look again, I've had no suggested names.
So do I get the sense that the committee was recommending this motion?
The committee is not recommending this motion. This motion has come from Councillor Piggott. Because we didn't make that recommendation as a committee, did we?
I'm happy to inform the chamber that I will be supporting this motion as it stands, if that helps Councillor Jones. So certainly from what the Mayor has just said, it wasn't as how this council probably assumed, that there was just a list of waiting CEOs that the LGA had. So we were maybe a little misinformed early on. So.
I think I can add to that the potential length of time. If it had only been for a month, that potentially we might have had people, but for the fact that it would take at least 3 months, and the experience that some other mayors have told me about has taken closer to 5 months to find the appropriate person for the job. I'm not saying that that necessarily will take that long, but certainly that has been the guide. When asked how long do we want someone for, we've said 3 to 6, worst possible case scenario of 3 to 6 months. Now, whether that has precluded some people, we don't know. Okay. Councillor Henschke.
Well, I've got mine as read.
Oh, sorry. I apologise. It's Councillor Lemon.
So I just want to also, as another member of that committee, say that I will be supporting this motion. Not just because we haven't had appropriate people, in my opinion, come forward that could just take the reins and then leave at the appropriate time, but also because I think the committee spent a lot of time looking at this issue, and I think we should be looking at the main game, which is getting a new CEO. So for that reason, and the others, I will be supporting this motion. So whilst it didn't come from the CEO committee, I'm glad it's here.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got some real concerns about these series of motions tonight, because in my mind I thought we appointed a committee, and the job of that committee is to establish the timetables that we're hearing about tonight, wanting to hear about tonight. The job of that committee is set quite clearly. They have an established brief. They're in their preparation phase. They're spending good preparation phase time, which I see is very healthy as far as going forward. So I have some concerns about the governance of what we're doing here. We've got a committee. It's as per the Local Government Act. I see this as interfering with the established terms of reference under the Local Government Act. That's all I have to say, so I won't be supporting these. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
No, I don't think that that's the case, that there's any kind of Local Governance Act problem with it. This council sets, the tasks and made a number of motions in relation to what was going to happen, and this council can choose a different path if it so wished. It's completely within this council's ability to do that. The fact that Councillor Piggott brought the motion, or whether a member of the CEO committee brought it, is of no real relevance, I think. And having listened to what Councillor Cornish said, I think I'll be supporting Councillor Piggott's motion.
I jumped in too soon before, but I don't have anyone on this sheet now, so Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. I appreciate comments of Councillor Henschke, but they're probably more relevant to the second one, and I will perhaps speak to that ahead of this of that. What we're dealing with here is a decision we made about 6 weeks ago. I, like Councillor Jones, actually thought that there was actually a number of people who perhaps were recently retired or whatever of the level that we need in this sort of position that were sort of almost waiting for the call, and perhaps that was naive in hindsight, but that's clearly not the case. The other thing is I think we've got at least 2 people who can act as acting chief executive in a very capable manner, more than capable, and that's perhaps clearer to me 4 or 5 weeks on. As well. So that's really what we're doing, is that we do have the ability as a council to revisit decisions such as this, and I think it is a sensible thing as part of what we do actually is to abandon that and very much focus on the permanent appointment. So I'd seek your support.
Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Right, carried. We move on to item 10.2, also Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. Well, in regard to this motion, what I'm seeking here is, while we have a committee in place to recruit a new chief executive in accordance with the Act, and in accordance with its own terms of reference, we as a council do need to be across what's going on. It's probably the single most important thing currently on our agenda, and what I'm seeking to do with this motion is to really have the committee share in a formal way what it does plan to do in respect to recruiting the new CEO. Now, there has been some work done already by the committee. A number of these things are already either, or perhaps not in place, but, or from what I can understand, certainly have been considered or started. But I think it is important that as a council we are informed about what is going on, and in regard to the nature of how it should run, I think we should be told up front how that is going to happen, and be happy as a council that we buy into that, because as it currently stands, the committee will effectively undertake the recruitment process for the chief executive of the city of Burnside, an extremely important position that needs to be filled. So what this is asking for actually is a formal document coming from the work that the committee has already started, but needs to finish, I guess, to show us or to share with us what mechanisms are going to be used going forward to actually undertake this task. That's effectively what it's asking for. I'm also keen that it actually has an end point to aim for. We've got a lot of things going on, not just this, but like I say, this is the single most important thing I think that the council has to deal with currently. So what I'm seeking from the committee is to bring back to us a plan for how the recruitment of the CEO will be undertaken. I think then as council we have the ability to actually have input into that, but primarily I'm keen that the CEO recruitment committee actually does the job. But I do, as a member not on that committee, and I think everybody should around the chamber, very much have input and be confident that we are okay with how that's going to be undertaken. And I would like to see it finished by the 30th of September. I do, I have had, since this motion went out, I have had people tell me that's probably unrealistic. And look, if the report comes back and it does show to be unrealistic, I am, and I suspect we all will be, happy to work to a later deadline. But I am keen that it's something that some real urgency gets into, and also some real rigour in that the plan gets made, we actually get it as a council and we buy into it as well. And that's what this motion is after. I don't believe I'm looking to circumvent what's happening with the committee. Quite the opposite, actually. I would like to give the committee the full support of the council in this task, and I think that's what this motion does. I seek your support on this one too.
Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second this motion. I concur with Councillor Pickett. I think and I know that the committee's been working assiduously for the last few weeks to, as I understand it, get the recruitment process underway and put all the procurement arrangements in place. But I too would be very happy to see how the process mapped out, so that we can actually see what the steps are, how much work there is, which is a lot, and the end game being that we are able to, in a position to be able to make an appointment as soon as possible. I think 30th of September is probably ambitious, but I think it's really good to have a date there, because I think if a good recruitment firm is procured through our procurement process, and they get underway with all of their contact skills and expertise very quickly, get the advertising out there and their contacts moving, we should be in a position to be able to review the applications, shortlist and interview people. So I would hope that this is all possible, and I'd really like to see this mapped out and presented to us, not in any way to undermine the work of the committee, but to support it so that we're all comfortable as well. So I hope you'll support this.
As presiding member, I wish to make some comments and an explanation. First of all, you will find at the end of our agenda tonight a motion, or a confidential motion in relation to the decisions the committee has already made. We have had 3 meetings. We have not come to any final conclusions in those meetings, apart from 2 motions that you will see later on. But now that a decision has been made in relation to the interim acting CEO, that will actually remove some of the stages and steps off of the original plan that I did present to the committee at our last meeting. We do, of course, have to serve and we follow the terms of reference and the Act very specifically. After advice from other councils with recent experience in these matters, along with the need to recruit the best person for this role, as presiding member of the CEO Recruitment Performance Appraisal Committee, I have a plan that is to go to the next meeting, which we will have to have on Monday of this next week, in order to comply. If this resolution goes through, we will have to get a report back to the next meeting, which is the 23rd of July. In order for that to happen, we will have to meet on Monday of next week, so that a report can be ready for the Thursday for the agenda to go out in the agenda. We must ensure the right person with the right personal qualities, skills, experience and qualifications is appointed. This should not be a rush job. It is our duty to those who elected us and to whom we serve. That is not only the people around this table, but the people in our community who elected us. According to the Act, we must take steps to appoint a CEO. That we know, and that is what we are complying with. We must. We've done everything that is required of us so far, according to the Act and the terms of reference of the committee. We need to comply in relation to these. We must appoint a selection panel. This council created a selection panel when it decided to use when you voted for the people to be on the committee. We have to advertise. We have already decided that we are going through the procurement process that the council administration use. That procurement process we had deferred until Councillor Dawes came back from his leave. He has now got his computer operating so that he can receive emails while he's overseas, and can be part of the decision-making in relation to the procurement process. And that will happen, hopefully. I have a meeting tomorrow with procurement to finalise the report that goes out to the committee. And once that goes out, we will have been given by our administration the names of companies that are suggested. We will then have the opportunity to suggest additional names or reject certain companies. That will be the process that is followed by the committee. That decision will have to be made by Monday night.
What you're saying is going to come back in a report?
Yes, it will come back in a report, but I am trying to explain the process so it's clear and for everybody in the room.
But I don't think it's relevant to the motion. What we're asking for you is to detail that in the report.
Okay, so what I'm saying is we have got an amended draft plan based somewhat on what Councillor Piggott suggested and the one that we originally created, which included an interim. We will have a plan. So long as we can meet Monday, we will have a report back at the next council meeting, assuming, of course, this motion is passed. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. Look, as a member of the committee, I will be supporting this motion. I do think some of the timelines are a little bit tight, Councillor Piggott, but I do note that it says with a view to complete. It doesn't say actually to complete, it says with a view. And I'll take that view and I'll see it long in the distance, I think. But I will support this. It's just clearly, I see this motion as clearly council actually saying we'd like to be kept a bit more up to date, a bit more communication, and that's perfectly fine. You know, you don't go through this process on a regular basis. It's quite irregular, and I'm more than happy to support this motion and you know, for the rest of council to receive a bit more communication about what's going on here, and for us to come up with a bit of a timeline and a plan that we possibly might or might not meet. But yes, I will support the motion as it stands.
Councillor Henschke?
No.
No, sorry. Councillor Lemon, apologies.
I too will support this motion. I think it's very important. This is a very important thing that we'll be doing. It will actually define this council for the next 3 years once we appoint a CEO. And I think it's really important that all of council is comfortable with the process and all of council has a buy-in to the process. I remember when we last appointed a CEO, all of council interviewed the 3 candidates. It was the entire council that was involved in that. And I think, again, this is somebody that we're appointing. It's the only staff member that is answerable to us. And I think this motion gives it the importance that it really should have. So, yes, I'm very happy to support this. I'm very happy that the rest of council is involved.
Apologies again. What happens is the name jumps to the top of the list and I'm still reading the bottom of the list and it's already jumped. So my apologies. Sincerest apologies. Now it's Councillor Henschke.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Okay, this to me reads like number 2 there, you know, that the view to completion by the 30th of September. And we've heard tonight from Councillor Piggott saying, oh, maybe it's unrealistic. And then we've heard from Councillor Davey that, you know, she wants to see the process mapped out. Well, firstly, the process is being mapped out. I've just heard from the Mayor explaining that the committee does do its job, which is the job to establish a timetable. Their job is to appoint an executive search consultant, and no doubt that executive search consultant will give them another timeline. I think it's very, very naive of us as a chamber to say, oh, let's just choose the 30th of September. You know, it's just some sort of KPI. We're trying to performance manage out the mayor, you know? What are we trying to do here? What's the agenda? I don't know what's going on, honestly. I just think I'm just really gobsmacked by this whole series of motions, because we have a committee, is appointed, we have an LGA Act, it's all set in stone, written in stone. Let's just let them get on with it. If they and stop what we're doing here. I don't see it as constructive. And the 30th of September, where did that come from? I have no idea. And I'm not confident to give put this date on the end of some plan and be held to it. So I will not support this, and I totally support the idea of plans. Very, very important, but this is the job of the committee, and they are going to get on and do it. The executive search consultant will be professional and will do this as well. They've got a brief. Their brief may well be, you know, how and when they consult with us. That's probably already it's in the LG Act too. I don't know what else there is to say. It doesn't really make sense to me. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
I differ from the view that there is some kind of untoward process going on here. I think that a number of people have said it quite well. I think Councillor Henchley said it. I don't know what's going on. And as a member of council, I haven't heard feedback from the committee coming back to me, letting me know what the process is, what's going on. And so as a councillor, we have a process to go, and I want to know what's happening with that. Essentially, it's been quite some time now, and I would like the feedback from it. It's definitely not the Mayor's committee. It is a committee of 4 members of the elected body.
Me, I find that offensive.
No, I said it's not your committee.
It is not. It is the committee that you appointed.
Agree. That's what I'm saying.
The Mayor happens to be, irrespective of who it is, the Mayor is the presiding member.
No, sorry. I'm correcting so I'm trying to correct the statement that we are trying to performance manage the Mayor. In my view, that's not what we're doing. It is a committee of a number of elected members, and it's not the Mayor's responsibility to do this alone. It is that committee's obligation to do that. So, in my view, it is. It's not about one individual or the Mayor or particular individuals. It's asking what's going on with that committee. So I see no problem with it. The Act requires us to go through this process, but it certainly doesn't set out step by step what that process should be. I meant no disrespect, Your Worship, but I think that this would definitely help me and set my mind at ease if I knew what the process was going to be. And I completely agree with Councillor Cornish when it has the words "with a view to completion of," because if it's not possible, it's not possible, and then that's what we'll find out on the 23rd of July. But essentially, what this councillor is saying is, and then what I'm saying is that I would like this done as a priority and as soon as possible. And if it's not possible by the 30th of September, then that's more than okay with me. So if you come back and say, you know, here's a new date, then that's more than okay. It's definitely not setting a timeline. So I look forward. I'll be voting for this. I hope it gets up, and I look forward to the report on the 23rd.
Councillor Turnbull.
Well, I support the idea of the plan, but I'm a bit concerned with the dates. I think 3rd of July, which is the next meeting, is a bit hard when one of the committee members is away and won't be back in time. So, and really, who wants to sit on a cruise ship and talk about CEO recruitment? Which is what maybe does, but maybe doesn't. So I would like to see the dates changed, maybe put forward another fortnight to the 6th of August, which would be the meeting afterwards. And the 30th September one may be amended to as soon as possible, or instead of a specific date.
I haven't got any other names on here, unless somebody jumps at the last minute. So I will now put it back to Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. Look, we don't do this very often, that's true, and may that always be the case. What I was keen to do here was to actually, as a member not on that committee, be party to what the plan is. We've heard the plan is already well in motion, and that's good. I don't think actually this is asking for very much that doesn't already almost, if not, it doesn't already exist in terms of providing us a plan. And I think as a council we would be remiss in not actually formalising this and signing up with how we're going to do this up front, because we're all got to own the decision at the end. We really do. And so we don't want to be at the other end of the process and have members of us saying, well, you know, the whole thing was flawed. I mean, I'd have done it much differently and I'd have got a different result. We don't want that. We do need to work as one in regard to employing this CEO. The 30th of September, I think the word unrealistic, I might be wrong, I do say things not exactly as I'd like to. I think unrealistic, came from the fact that I'd said various people had told me it was unrealistic. Where it came from was it's almost 4 months from when we no longer had a CEO. And it is possible to recruit a CEO by the 3rd of September. It does mean that the recruitment committee has to meet pretty regularly. It does mean deadlines have to be set. It does mean council needs to, council meetings need to be hit as well in terms of what we have to do. It's, I actually have, I'm no expert in this by any means, but if none of us had anything else to do, there's no problem in hitting the 30th of September. Now, except that is not the real world, but I also don't accept that it's not a possibility. I think the words "with a view" weren't really to open up the floodgates and make it the 31st of March 2020. However, it did really put in the fact I'd like this to be as I think we all would, really. I don't think anyone really rails against this, to be a pretty efficient process, because the sooner we can resolve it provides certainty and, gets us on to other stuff. So I think if we can put a fire under this as much as possible, we should. So that's where I was going. It wasn't a point scoring exercise. It wasn't meant to be a criticism of the committee so far. It was purely the fact this is an important thing, and I think as a council we need to be part of it. And that's what I think this motion does. Thank you.
Those in favour? Those against? Division's been called. Those who are favour, please stand. Councillor Davis, Councillor Piggott, Councillor Davey. You caught up? Councillor Cornish, Councillor Jones, Councillor Carbone and Councillor Lemon. Those against, Councillor Henschke and Councillor Turnbull. Carried. Right, we move to questions without notice. Oh, sorry. No, apologies. I've missed one. 10.3 has been withdrawn. And I think the next one should be 10.4. So Alexandra Avenue Plantation Anniversary. Councillor Henschke, my apologies.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Sadly, it's 100 years on the 19th of July that the Alexandra Avenue Memorial Plantation they were planted 100 years ago, and sadly we haven't got an event happening equivalent to the Diamond Jubilee, which happened in 1979. However, we are moving forward to an event, and so the motion is that the City of Burnside plan an event and seek funding or sponsorship for the 100-year anniversary of the Alexandra Avenue Plantation. Residents have called for this, and many residents have lived in the area obviously for 50 years, were there for the Diamond Jubilee, which was attended by the Governor and dignitaries, and again, hopefully we can do it justice again at 100 years. And it's not only the residents that have lived in the Rose Park Turret Gardens ward for many years that are interested in this celebration. It's all the new families, families with children, children that run up and down Alexandra Avenue for sports day, enjoy the shade of the trees. These are really important trees for the amenity of the area, as well as remembering the fallen soldiers. So I do hope you support this motion, and I know that the administration will do it justice. Thank you.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. Yes, I absolutely and utterly second this motion and thank Councillor Henschke for raising it in the chamber. I'll ask a series of questions if that's okay with the administration. What's the actual date?
Can I just, for the sake of people who are at home, can I introduce Ms Patelli and Mr Harvey, who will attempt to answer your questions.
Through the Chair, 19th of July, 1919.
Okay, so that's pretty, yep. Yeah, it's 10 days away. What are the current plans to commemorate the 100 years anniversary?
Through the Chair, probably a two-pronged approach could be taken. One is a smallish type event on the actual anniversary date being 19th of July, or a 11th of November commemoration on Remembrance Day.
Is it possible to do both? Is that something that the administration would consider?
Through the Chair, yes, that's possible.
I just, obviously the Governor's a fairly important person, and I'd imagine in 10 days his calendar would be pretty full, but he might be able to, but then again it's the 11th of the 11th, so you probably have a lot of commemorations to go to as well. Okay, will you be notifying local residents about the event on the 19th, the smallish event?
Through the Chair, probably minimal, given the lead-in time, minimal opportunity for that. So we would probably propose a small advertisement in the Messenger, but given, again, the timing, that would probably only be published a couple of days before the actual event.
Yep.
Probably advice to elected members or inviting them to a ceremony, but that's probably as far-reaching as you'll get in the time frame we've got. Okay.
Yeah, understand. Obviously, it's a bit short notice, but we will. Yes, I suppose this does lead on, and thank you, Councillor Henschke. In terms of future plans, and it was something that I wondered about how many other commemorations of memorials we might have around the city. Are we going to maybe develop a forward-year planner of when these 100 years and 75 years and 50 years might be coming up, so that we can plan for these in the future, maybe?
Through the Chair, we can
look into that.
I
I do hear we've lost our heritage officer recently,
yes,
so
which
would have been perfect job to research these things. But thank you for your the answers of those questions. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to move an amendment, please, just to the effect that we include the date. So it becomes that the City of Burnside plan an event and seek funding or sponsorship for the 100-year anniversary of the Alexandra Avenue plantation on 19th of July 2019. Thanks.
Does that need to be an amendment, or are you happy to accept that, mover and seconder? It's just by the inclusion of the date?
I'd just like something to be there, because if we look at this in 6 months' time...
I think this could be done under the slip rule rather than an amendment to save us a lot of time.
I'm happy with that. If we actually need the date up there.
I wouldn't bother with that. I think that could be misread that that is planning the event for that date. So I think
all right, I'll change it, which occurs on 19th of July 2019. Thank you. And the intent is so that we all know, and that when someone reads the minutes in a month, we know that this is what we're talking about, and that date's fixed there. So hopefully someone will second that, to just have that actually right up front.
Okay. I'm getting an indication that we don't need to have a seconder, that they're happy to accept that as not an amendment, but just under the slip rule to include the date. I think it makes it sensible. Thank you. Councillor Davey. Now it's Councillor Davis.
Oh, no, Councillor Davey hit the nail on the head.
Councillor Cub.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to Councillor Henschke for bringing this up. In one way, I'm delighted with the motion. In another way, I'm saddened that we haven't really planned anything. which I think is a bit embarrassing for this council, but anyway, we'll move on. So for the November 11, I think to do this justice, we probably should be planning something substantial. I don't want us to go away thinking we'll do a small-ish event. So for November 11, just off the top of your head, what sort of things could we do on that day?
Through the chair, that would give us sufficient time to liaise with relevant groups like RSLs and RAFs and etc. So that would be a joint event, and it would be an official memorial and service led probably by the mayor. We would have dignitaries invited. We could invite the governor, local MPs, etc. And it would give us time to organise a plaque possibly on the site as well to commemorate the 100-year anniversary. Also, we've got Rose Park Primary School next door, so great opportunity there to have them involved in that event or commemoration. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to be involved in some capacity. It would also give us the opportunity to probably organise a bugle play or music to that effect with the last post. And we've got the flag pole next to the monument there, so that would also give us opportunity to raise the flag. And of course, much more marketing and promotion around our Focus magazine, our local messenger column, social media, and also would give us opportunity to probably invite our local residents in that area. We could do a letterbox drop. I think it's fair to say that would give us, a bit more sufficient time to plan, and of course, maybe even invite or try and find some descendants of the fallen, and invite them along to the day as well.
Well, that all sounds very good, so thank you. I do have a subsequent question, if I can, Your Worship, just in terms of the legality side of things here. So the motion as it stands talks about going into, sort of sponsorship arrangements and so forth. Nothing by this, but are we allowed to do that? Like, are we allowed to enter into sponsorship with a local business or something in terms of funding to do certain things? Are we allowed to do that?
Through the chair, council has a sponsorship and donation policy. So I believe that would be you would have to follow the protocol as per that policy, and I think that you are able to enter into those arrangements. We just need to be clear that we're following policy, and I think it needs to come to council for a decision regarding that. There is grant funding that we could potentially explore rather than sponsorship if you're looking at income opportunities. But again, very limited because the 100-year anniversary for World War, that funding has ceased now. That ended last financial year. So not much funding available for events of this nature.
But hypothetically, we could enter into some sort of an agreement with, say, Burnside Village, and they could provide, food or something like that. Could we do those?
Potentially, we could explore it. Yeah, we could explore it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, thanks. A couple of questions. The event you described, what would that cost? There you go. Oh, well, at the end of the day, we do need to put a price on it.
Quote.
My line of questioning is not actually against the concept, it's against, I don't...
Through the chair, I could take that on notice, if I could please, and I can bring that back. I think potentially we could fund it operationally through existing event budgets, but I'll need to cost some of this out.
Okay, well, perhaps if I ask you that, are you confident that you can fund an event you've just described out of operating budgets without us allocating more tonight?
Yeah, potentially we could, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse my ignorance, when do these trees look the best between now and the end of the year?
Mr Harvey.
Through the Mayor, you need an arborist for that.
An arborist for that, perhaps two.
You need an artist for that.
I would say it's going to be around that kind of, I'd say after summer, probably into the autumn, particularly for those trees because they start to turn at that point.
Yeah, I want to do it for the end of the year, so what's the best between now? So that's perhaps answered my question.
Well, probably leading into the summer. So, I mean, the 11th of November is going to be a much better outcome than July in a week or so.
Yeah, good, okay.
Yeah.
And my last question is around the date probably is that what are your views on in terms of Remembrance Day, it has a lot of established events, so what are your views on having another event that we're keen to focus on the fact that not only it's a remembrance event, I certainly get that, but keen to focus on the fact it's 100 years since, you know, the making the gesture, for want of a better word, of planting these trees and protecting these trees for the last 100 years as a special thing. What are the chances that that might be drowned out a bit and perhaps starve us of dignitaries or whatever on Remembrance Day itself? Quite high.
Okay. I believe that as far as Remembrance Day goes, the event there particularly, well, it's very, very low key. I believe we lay a wreath or two. There's no other ceremony or activity that occurs there at that point. The focus there is around Anzac, as it is in a number of other places. I can't speak for any other location in terms of Remembrance Day, but I would say that Remembrance Day is a much more low-key affair than Anzac Day. So I would think that you wouldn't have that level of competition in terms of an event that's being held there. That takes nothing away from the sentiment or the impact of those two dates. But that is, if you ask that question, then I think that's reality of the situation.
And what I was getting at was that are we better off on another day, another neutral day, if you like, as opposed to the Remembrance Day because of all the other things that might be going on? From what I'm getting from you is you feel that perhaps that isn't a concern I should have. So, thank you.
Through the Mayor, I would say that those are dates that we've provided as possibilities. As a council, you have every opportunity to choose a different date and move on something different. So we've just come forward with those dates because as far as Remembrance Day, it just sits well with what's occurring there. So we would leave that with you to determine those dates.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Sorry, just quickly. Good motion. My suggestion is Remembrance Day is a Monday this year. Remembrance Sunday is on the 10th, would be a much better day because you're not going to get a great turnout on a Monday, frankly.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. Having the major event in November sounds really good when the trees are at their best, but I'm wondering what do you have in mind if you're thinking of a small event for next week on the actual day, the real day? Quickly think.
Through the chair, Alan's team could potentially organise a tree planting ceremony next to, not near the section where the primary school is. There's a spot that's available there that we could potentially plant a tree, have a small ceremony maybe with a provision of a wreath and the mayor there to maybe just turn the soil and plant the tree essentially. Low key but still commemorative.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
I think that doing it next week on a Friday is probably going to be a wasted opportunity. And that whilst it might be a small thing, I don't think that it really gives it. Like I agree with Councillor Davey at the beginning, and now I actually think that it should probably be a couple of weeks later if you're going to actually have some kind of hope of making it something halfway decent. And so what my suggestion would be is to make it, say, on the 2nd of August or something like that, and to actually remove the 19th of July 2019 to actually give it some opportunity for success. Given that the movement seconded to put it in, I won't move an amendment because we've got other stuff to do, but my suggestion would be the mover and seconder take out the date because otherwise you're going to have maximum 5 or 10 people rock up, in my view, and it's going to be lost. If the administration had another couple of weeks, they could then, start to ask, Vicky Chapman or, different people or Marshall to come along and actually make it something important. Otherwise, I think you're gonna miss the event. But I won't move the amendment. I'll leave it up to the mover and seconder if they want to amend it now, which I think you would be wholly justified to do, is go back to what it was originally, and the administration can still, it's your ward, so you can choose what to do.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I disagree. I actually think we must have something on the 19th. I think that is 100 years. And I've put my button on and off the whole time. I think 10 days is plenty of time to do things like do a mail out to all our engaged Burnside people and let them know. There's a lot of stuff you can do very quickly. There's stuff that can go on our website. We can put a press release out. I just think that that 10 days is enough time. We can actually ask the local MPs who may well be able to come for 15 minutes. They have cars, they have gaps in their days, they have drivers, they don't have to be looking for a park and walk to the car park. They could quite possibly come, and I think they would make, if they're able to, I think they'll make every effort to come. So I think it's absolutely essential that we do this on the 19th of July. It's absolutely essential that it is actually the 100 years. And I'm not unhappy that it's going to be a low-key affair either. I think that a fanfare is probably a bit over the top for this. I think this is a remembrance. This is a commemoration. This isn't a celebration. It's a commemoration, and I think that something done with class is what this requires. So I'm very happy to support this and keep the date, and I think we must do something 100 years onwards. It's very important that we do something, and I like the idea of the 11th of November. I think that's a really good idea as well.
I would like to say that I totally agree with Councillor Lemon. I think it is really important that that day is celebrated on that day, no matter how small. And one thing that we've forgotten about is that it is school holidays. And given sufficient notice to people and sufficient interest engaged, then we could actually have a slightly larger audience than we would normally have because it is school holidays. It does depend, of course, on the parents' belief or understanding about the importance of the event, but for local people, I think it could be very useful. The other thing that I would just want to mention is the 11th of November. At all the schools that I've worked at, we've always had 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month celebrations or commemorations, really. And involving this local school, involving Rose Park Primary School, because they would only have to walk a very short distance, is an excellent idea. And they probably may not have had that opportunity to have such a celebration. Pity we couldn't get the Pembroke bugler who did the bugling at the Kensington Gardens Anzac service. She was absolutely brilliant, I have to admit. But they will be involved in their own service, no doubt, on that day. But perhaps there is a possibility of getting a bugler for next Friday week. Friday week? That would be fantastic if we could get such.
Do you know a ward councillor?
You'd have to know who the bugler was. But she was magnificent. Anyway, sorry, Councillor Pickett.
Could I have a crack at an amendment? What I'm seeking to do here, because the discussion has gone in various ways, and I hope it doesn't sort of upset the mover and the seconder, but I feel we should actually, if I can just talk to it and then give it, Rob, while I'm working out in my head, but I think actually we should confirm 2 events, one for next Friday on the day, and a more significant event on around the 11th of November. So could I say that the City of Burnside plan 2 events and seek funding and sponsorship for the 100-year anniversary of Alexandra Avenue and Plantation, which at Plantation, say, being, and then 1, an event on the actual day, 19 July 2019. to a more significant event on or around 11 November 2019. And that a report return to council in respect to the later event.
Harvey.
Okay. We run out of speakers, have we?
I've just spoken to the governance officer and she seems to think that it could be acceptable under the slip law. Because we've been talking about this all the way along, and it's not a
There's no way that's acceptable.
No, there's no way
Right,
it's
big
acceptable.
change.
It's massive.
I might second advice to the government.
I'm sorry. Well, actually, I'm okay if it does take
Isn't
a
it
slip.
Harvey? Harvey hasn't spoken.
I'm okay if it is slip roll, but I question it.
Would you be willing to accommodate it under their slip rule? It's not contrary to your
Seeking
original.
leave from the meeting to accept this as a variation to the original motion, yes, I would be happy to.
Let's do that. Let's see.
Councillor Hench, that's not slip roll.
Then it would remain as Councillor Henschke's motion, seconded by Councillor Porter.
It's as if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Can't we move?
I have to go on, I'll be done by last time.
Yeah, you can move that I speak again, for example, and then I'll second it.
Councillor Carbone only asked questions.
Yes, Councillor Carbone only asked questions before, so you wish to speak?
There you go.
So you're happy to second it?
I've got Councillor Pickett who spoke, who needs to speak.
Needs to talk to the amendment, presumably, does he, or no?
Yeah.
Can I just make sure it's okay that it's...
No, you haven't spoken to it.
No. And if I could I have the report be presented? It's a small thing, but can that be point 2 of the motion? The report? Yeah. So, 100-year, including an event on 19 July, in addition... No, it should read, and a more significant event on around 11 November 2019. Actually, I haven't got much to add. It isn't inconsistent, I don't think, with discussions we've had. I just think it just makes it clearer in regard to what we're after as a council. And I just think, I mean, a great job straight off the bat in regard to what the event might look like tonight. But I just think it'd be worthwhile to, again, have it come back and get our full support ahead of you pressing the button on it. And the other thing I do wonder whether, depending on what the event is, whether you're going to be able to get it out of the operating budget. That is the brief, certainly, but you know, I think that needs to be looked at in a bit more timely fashion as well. So that's what it seeks to do.
Councillor Carbone, you wish to second it?
Yes, I will, Worship.
It's only you or Councillor Jones.
That's all right, I'll second it.
Okay,
But just
thank
to
you.
clarify, so the mover and seconder won't take this on? Just to save the next 2 minutes? Okay. All right, happy to second this amendment, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I assume this is what we're going to do anyway. So we all concur that the 19th of July is the date that we should do it because it is the anniversary. We cannot let that go. But I think we all agree that we can't just let this slip and just do a smallish event just because we happen to drop the ball a little bit and do something too small. So it is an important milestone. We do need to do something on the day, but we can't just let it go with just something small. It's not doing it justice. It's not showing the importance of the event. The 11th of November is a good time of year, and it is obviously a good date as well to have an event. You know, it will give us time to do something significant as well. And I suppose if we get the invites, or if we start the process now, yes, there will be other competition on the day, but maybe if we start the communication now, that it is an extra special day for us in this area, we might get those dignitaries and we might get the Premier and the Governor and so forth if we start now. So in summary, I thought this is what we're always going to do. As I was sitting here, everyone's sort of nodding their heads thinking what a great idea it is to have the two events. So I'm happy to support the motion because, to be honest, I thought we were doing it anyway.
Now, we have a seconder, so we are now going to move the amended motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against, it's unanimously passed. Now the amendment becomes the motion. So can I please have hands in support of the motion as amended? And those, sorry? Unless there's only one person who can speak? No, we go back to the beginning. We go back to Councillor Henschke, sorry.
Just to sum up, I want to thank the residents, Mr and Mrs Joy Shepherd, for raising our awareness, and Mr Peter Lane, who has written the history of the Avenues of Honour, and that brochure sits in actually the little Sparrow Cafe at the Alexandra Avenue plantation. So if anyone wants to read about the Avenue of Honour, they can read about that with Mr Peter Lane's document. So thank you all.
Perhaps some of that information could be provided to me, and if there is a speech, then I can include some of that information in the speech. Otherwise, I have to reinvent the wheel. So you'll negotiate that. Thank you. Excellent, if you've got that. All right, so I will put the amended motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Right, now we will move on to questions without notice. Thank you, staff, for all of your lengthy deliberations and decision making. Questions without notice, there are none. Motions without notice, there. Oh, sorry, questions without notice, yes, you, Councillor Turnbull, you have one.
Yes, I have a question for the administration. It's when will the independent report concerning ERA water be ready for presentation to council, one that we had commissioned for us?
Through the Mayor.
Somebody's got their mic on?
You're on.
That's better. Through the Mayor, I understand the report is expected back at the end of July the 26th, I think is the deadline, and the report will be presented to Council in August, hopefully the first meeting in August.
Sorry, I have to have my microphone on. Now we'll move on to reports of officers. Sorry, motions without notice, we haven't any. I did say out of order. There are no motions without notice. Now, I will go through these, and because I believe there are people who wish to speak on each of these, I'm not going to go through and ask, go through the list. We'll just start with the first one and work our way through. So the first report of officers is the Office of Chief Executive Officer. Who wishes to speak on that? Now I need an adjudication of this because about 3 hands went up at once.
Sorry,
sorry, Councillor Henschke, your name's on the buzzer, so it is you.
So ready to go now? Right. Thank you, Mayor. So this Chief Executive's report, I have moving an alternative motion here that the interim acting Chief Executive report be received, and 2, that the development of the next 10-year strategic plan be put on hold until the permanent appointment of a new Chief Executive Officer. Now, the rationale for this is that it's absolutely critical that the new permanent Chief Executive Officer develops the new 10-year strategic plan. So they and their team will be responsible for it and execute it. It is absolute fundamental principle. And the risks, there is no risk at the moment because we are a few years into a 10-year plan. Our current 10-year plan is Be the Future of Burnside, 2016 to 2026. So we're only a few years into a current strategic plan, and I don't see any risk with putting this plan to develop a new strategic plan on hold until the permanent appointment of a new Chief Executive Officer. Thank you.
A seconder to this motion? Thank you, Councillor Turnbull. You seconded it. Do you wish to speak?
Support it. I think the new CEO will likely to have new ideas and fresh strategies and should have input into it, so I think we support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Davis?
Can I ask so my understanding is that in the CEO's report there's already a report on work that they're currently doing now, and we won't be having workshops until late August. What does this do to the timelines? What's the implications of pushing back the strategic plan for however knows how many months? Do you want to? Sorry, aren't you? You don't have a special one? Yeah, I thought you got a special one. CEO override? Yeah, just shut down.
Oh.
If he doesn't, he should.
Use mine. Yeah, use mine.
Oh, 'cause
Okay,
I've
thank
still
you.
got mine on.
Just shift this out the way and I'll move it across.
Oh, it's really against it.
All right, won't go far.
Lean towards it.
Thank you. Through the chair. There's a couple of things to bear in mind in terms of the possible impact on this one. We, as you mentioned, as is quoted in the CEO report, have already engaged consultants to the end of August to start the initial research and evidence gathering and analysis, as well as conduct an initial workshop with the elected members, which is currently planned for August, I believe. So far we have 35,000 committed to that process, and we currently have about 25,000 of that still outstanding. The administration believes that this work could probably continue in terms of the evidence gathering without impacting necessarily the intent of this motion. It's not linked in any way to the opinion of the CEO. We also believe that it would be worthwhile to consider conducting or continuing to conduct the community consultation, because in reality it's going to take some time for that process to be completed, and we're probably going to be looking about February before we actually get around to looking at the analysis back from that. So perhaps our recommendation would be that will continue. If we were to do that, then there would be no impact on our current expectation of when this work will be delivered. Under the Local Government Act, all councils are required to undertake the review of their strategic management plans within 2 years of an election. So in terms of the target date for us, we do need to have undertaken that process by November of next year. That includes the update of our long-term financial plan and budgets, which we've already done, and our asset management plans. So our strategic plan is the last linking element of that. So I think our concern is that it will be very tight. We could still do it if we were delayed by 6 months, but if it went any longer than that, then we're at risk of missing that deadline. And we've also got to bear in mind that we will be in the middle of a budget process at the same time next year. So it's not ideal, but we could possibly work around it. Thank you.
At great cost.
Councillor Day.
Thank you, Your Worship. While I understand the sentiments of Councillor Henschke's motion, I can't support this. I think for the reasons that have been articulated in that we've just heard reference to in paragraph 35 and 36 of the report on page 27, we have invested resources in hiring urban planning consultants to develop this new community plan, and I think this is our key policy planning document for the next 10 years. We've got statutory responsibilities to develop this, and that doesn't happen overnight. It is a long process. And I think we've already got workshops scheduled or in the pipeline for the end of August to start briefing our new elected members who haven't been through this process before, and to look at all of the issues that we need to look at to develop a strategic plan, the emerging trends, how we're going to involve our community, and what we see as our priorities. We all had policies for when we were elected, so we want to see those incorporated into this too. So I would be happy to see the timelines that are being set and that we're moving towards continue. And of course, a new CEO would come in and hitch on to, adopt this, be briefed on this, and add his or her flavour to it down the track. But I don't see them as being the drivers, their views as being the drivers of this. So I think it's important that we continue with this program.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I too won't be supporting this for very similar reasons. This particular body of work, reviewing the strategic plan within 2 years of an election, isn't actually the province of the CEO, it's the province of the 13 people in this room. And the LGA Act directs us as elected members to look at that within 2 years. So to look to delay this process, because we currently don't have a permanent CEO, I think misses the point. It's our plan. It doesn't belong to the CEO. The CEO doesn't develop it, we develop it. And we're the ones that are actually responsible under the Act to review it within 2 years. And I think there is no excuse for a delay. Whether we've got an interim CEO or whether we've got a permanent CEO is immaterial. Work has begun on this process because there is a time frame. We've got until next November. There is a lot of work that's being done in terms of looking at the demographics, and we haven't done this for a long time. That sort of research takes time. I want to know how the demographics of this town have changed over the last 4 years, 5 years really, since we last did this. There's a snapshot in time that needs to take place before we can make decisions about how we review this plan, and I don't see any reason, there's no valid reason to delay this because we've got an acting CEO. This is our responsibility. It's 13 people in this room who have responsibility for this, not the person yet to be appointed. That is not that person's responsibility, it's ours, so I won't be supporting this.
Councillor Joan.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is the big one, isn't it? This is the one at the Saturday morning workshop where we said we haven't done a full strategic review from scratch for 10 years. I think we agreed we're going to spend $100,000. We weren't just going to do the roll forward, which I think the last one is. This is the one that we're going to go with, and then will probably last for 10 years, and you'd probably say might last for the tenure of a CEO. You know, so how long do CEOs last? 10 years? You know, probably, realistically. So I think it actually is a good idea just to have a, I don't think it's that long a delay, and maybe we could amend the motion slightly to say, well, can we carry on doing the research? But I really feel that we owe a new CEO that they should be able to come in and stamp their vision on it. Because I know, yes, we are responsible for it, but ultimately it is going to be the CEO who is going to drive the strategic plan. They have the executive drives the strategic plan. We are the board of directors. And that's my view. You can disagree with my view, in which case you can speak against me, Councillor Lemon. But that is my view of what a CEO does. And I think it would be awkward for us to come up with a strategic plan that our new CEO thought was a total waste of time and was then forever angling to write a new one and spend another $100,000. So for the sake of what is potentially not a very long delay, given that we're going to have a plan to appoint someone by the end of September, and they could be in place 1st of October, who knows? It's potentially not that far away. I don't think it's going to kill us. I think it's a good idea to delay, and I think the new CEO will thank us. So I will support the motion.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, no. My understanding is, so the whole purpose of a board of directors and this council is the strategic direction. That is what we do. That's our job.
But we don't execute it.
Exactly right. We set it. We set the strategic direction, and we are the ones who drive it, who are responsible for it, and then the administration go off and do what we say. And it is up to this council and our community to drive that and set that. Now, the administration said that consultation at the moment is looking like it's going to happen in February, right? So that's my understanding of what they said, is that we'd go out to consultation in February, which means add another few months on top of that by the time it comes back and gets approved. Sorry? Oh. But that's my understanding of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to have a workshop in August that's currently scheduled. That's meant to be next month. The members of the CEO committee keep giggling when we say 30th of September as a date to set our CEO. I think that that's unachievable, and if you're looking at late October, maybe early November, you're going to miss the opportunity in December, January to even start the work on it. So really what you're doing is, I think as the administration said, you're going to push them right up to the end of the statutory period of when you have a chance to actually do this plan. And you're going to be pushed right up until the end of it. So we're actually 7 months away. If we start now, we're 7 months away from when we start to get something back. So in my view, if a CEO comes in, like let's just say a CEO is appointed in October, if you have a look at the work that would actually be done between now and then, it's minimal in terms of, it's administrative stuff in terms of getting our thoughts on the strategic plan and just presenting it to us. As to then what that all morphs into and the plan that then's developed afterwards, my understanding is that would be done much later in the year, probably after the CEO is appointed. So if we do have a new CEO come in or continue on, then they would be able to pick it up, because there's not that much work to really hone down into. They're gathering information now and drawing bare bones. And in August, that's when we tell them, as elected members, what we want to do. And if we don't tell them in August what we want to do, if we don't tell them, we have to push that elected members workshop all the way back until November, not to mention the fact that we've already engaged someone. We already have a contract with somebody to start to do this work. So to my mind, this should have happened however many, should have happened before, but we've already got contracts in place to start this process and do it. So I think that it would be a very silly idea to stop now, push everything back for a number of months, so that the CEO, whoever they are, says, okay, continue exactly what you're doing and we'll talk to you again in now April next year. So I see absolutely no benefit to slowing down. We are the strategic centre here. The CEO will not be putting a stamp on our strategic direction. That's for us to do. And there is little to no benefit in pushing it off. And it's only going to drive us into that November timeframe and put us through budget period and make this thing a lot harder than it should be. So I completely disagree with the motion, and I'm just happy to receive the report.
I'm going to speak at this point because I am concerned as chair of this board that there was no consultation made with me whatsoever by the previous CEO or the acting CEO in relation to these decisions. When the new acting CEO was appointed, one of my questions I asked was, or I discussed with him was, I was concerned about future development of strategic plan. I had some discussion, wanted to have a discussion in relation to decisions that should be made in relation to this. I was not told that a decision had already been made and a company had already been recruited. I don't believe that that is an appropriate way for us to have been dealt with. Secondly, I was told there was going to be a workshop. Now, Councillor Lemon said, this is our strategic plan. We should be leading this strategic plan. And the Act says that this council leads the strategic plan, not our administration. My concern is I've asked questions, didn't get answers. I was not told exactly what was happening. I was told there was going to be a workshop, same as all the rest of you were told when it hit our portal, that it was going to be on the 20th of August. When I asked questions about what that was going to be about, I was told that it was going to be an opportunity for our staff to provide us with information about that we've currently received. Now we're told that this is actually part of the initiatives of the new strategic plan. I am stating, I am not trying to persuade, I am stating information as chair of this board that I believe we should be totally in control of the decisions in relation to the development. No, you're not unless you're going to tell me what the part of the Act is.
Well, I think we need to actually assert.
No.
We have discussed this matter.
Excuse me. No, we have not.
We
had a workshop on it.
We have not had a workshop on it.
The CEO's report.
We have not had a workshop on it.
We would need a rescission.
Councillor Lemon?
I have a question.
Certainly.
Why do you imagine that you should have been told about this?
We
should have been told about this.
It is actually the right...
I'm a bit worried about you saying, I have not heard, you're not managing director here.
No, I'm not the managing director, but as the mayor, out of courtesy, I think there should be discussions being provided. And therefore, I would, of course, bring back any information that I had gathered or any concerns I had, I would have brought back to the elected members.
It's not your job to do that.
I've made my statement. Councillor Piggott.
Look,
I won't be voting anyway, so it doesn't matter.
based on what the mayor has just said, I mean that doesn't sound appropriate. I think that does need to be sorted out if that was the situation. And however, I don't believe that is necessarily a.
Okay. My issues, I've not been told anything.
Can I ask a question first? Is there
Yeah.
something that needs to be said?
Sorry, please.
Sorry, through the chair, I might be able to clarify a few of those things. The consultants that we got on board were brought on board not as people who were going to develop the strategic plan per se, but as a set of hands to start doing a lot of the data collection and gathering that would feed into information that would help council make some of those decisions. So they've started some of that initial work to just data gather and get some of that information together for us, and they're also we're looking to facilitate the workshop with council, which is booked in, I believe, for August at this stage. So they're certainly not setting anything or developing anything without council's input. They're a facilitator to help us pull some of that initial information together.
Thank you.
Look, the discussion at hand is whether the gain of having the CEO have input. Now, a new CEO would have input into this. I see that as a gain. I can see why we might like to do that. However, it is a strategic plan of the council, and I think if we were to delay it, we lose a year, at least actually, but a year, because what I feel we should do, the strategic plan has had the sort of nice little sort of neaten up for the last 2 terms of council, I think. So I think a review, thank you, much more appropriate word to say. And I think we did agree that we should, look at it afresh. And we are a fresh council. And the benefit of getting on and doing it now, and we sort of had this conversation at the time because we talked about, how much money we should put into the pot to make it happen. The benefit of doing it now is that we can set it, which is our role, and, I think we're all here representing the community to do that. And we can get on with doing it in the 2020-2021 budget. If we were to pull it back for the 2 months, 4 months, 9 months, or whatever it would take before a new CEO is in play, that would effectively definitely get us past the next budget cycle. And budget cycles are the things that actually drive councils at the end of the day. Each year we've got to work out what we're going to do for the next year. So I think it's really important, actually. CEOs, by their very nature, fit into various parts of a strategic plan cycle. There's no guarantee when a CEO might actually bob up relative to when a strategic plan's been updated. So I think from a CEO's point of view, that's not really an issue. What we miss from not having the person in it, I think, is limited. But what we lose is, I think, 12 months at least, with us actually setting a direction and actually moving in that direction on behalf of the community. So I'm very keen that we keep it on the current timetable, irrespective of what happens with the CEO recruitment. I think we very much should keep it in play, and for that reason I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor.
Have a question? Hasn't Councillor Davies spoken already?
I do have a question. I understand that we reviewed, when we did our recent budget and strategic business plan, that we allocated the money to start this process. Correct me if I'm wrong?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you. And did we not also, and I can't remember the month, we get a CEO report each month, but I recall having a discussion in one of these CEO reports when we were advised about this. Does anyone remember, I mean, I know, without putting you on the spot?
Through the chair, I'm afraid we'll have to take that one on notice.
Thanks. But yes, that's my recollection. Am I allowed to speak or have I already spoken?
You've already spoken.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak? Back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Just addressing Councillor Davies' point there about the budget we approved for 1920 for strategic planning. I guess that was before we made the decision to dismiss the CEO. So it's quite typical that when such things happen, that an acting interim, whatever you want to call them, CEO, decisions are made about putting certain initiatives on hold until a permanent appointment is made. That's what happens. A contingency plan, if you like, until a permanent appointment's made. So I see this as our contingency plan. We do have to spend every dollar wisely. I know that it's $35,000 being committed so far, but we do owe it to our residents and ratepayers that we do get value for money, and we're not going to waste money and rework any part of the plan. I'll just go back. All I need to say is we need to have buy-in by the new CEO and team. They need to be part of the process of us developing a strategic plan. I've heard there's two different things here as well, that 2 years of the election, it has to be reviewed. That's one thing. And then, of course, there's developing a brand new plan, which is the $100,000 exercise. So look, we can review the plan. That sounds quite feasible. But developing a $100,000 10-year strategic plan is a major undertaking. And I've heard from our acting Chief Executive Officer here tonight, Martin Cooper, that he says we can work around it. So the risk is we go ahead, pump up money into this project, full steam ahead, get the train go fast and get a strategic plan. The risk is we're going to have a CEO who may or may well not be aligned with it. We need to have buy-in by the CEO, and the risk is minimal. And it sounds like this new committee, the committee that Councillor Piggott was, the recruitment committee, sounds like they're going to have a very challenging time frame. So I see that there will be a new CEO in no time. So I can't see time being a risk. So I really want you to think about the dollars that we're throwing at more consultants, because we have to spend them very, very wisely. And finally, let's just set up this new CEO for success. It's the least we could do. Thank you.
Those in favour, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is lost. Okay, councillor Davis is moving the officer's recommendation, seconded by councillor Davey. Those in favour, or do you wish to speak? All right, those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously.
Yep.
Right, we move on to the 13.2, review of delegations, Eastern Health Authority.
Happy to move.
Councillor Cornish, you wish to move it?
Yep.
Is there any discussion required? Right, those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against, carried unanimously. We move on to City of Burnside Heritage Policy. Councillor Lemon, you have your name on the buzzer first.
Thank you. I have an amendment. Oh, and he's got it. Excellent. Thank you. And I will read it out to you. So my amendment, actually it's there. I'll read it out. That we establish a heritage reference group to identify key heritage matters of relevance to council. That council administration brings a report to council with regard to establishing a heritage reference group to address heritage policy matters. That the report proposes options but is not limited to the following: composition, frequency and duration of elected member involvement, objectives, feedback to council, how and when, financial implications and the role of council administration. And that this report be brought to council in September 2019. The reason for my amendment is that when we've had reports of strategic importance and policy importance, I have noticed around the chamber that there has often been disquiet about heritage being overlooked. So I think that with this policy, so the policy, obviously my first part of it is that the report is, where are we? What page are we on? That the report is received, is adopted. What's the first bit? Can you just go up to the first? Yeah. Yes, and that's number 1 and 2. So this is number 3. Yes, so we adopt this heritage policy, and that this is the amendment that actually also seeks to set up a reference group. And as I say, I've noticed disquiet. There are some people in this chamber who believe that heritage is not adequately addressed in some of our policies and in some of our strategies, and putting together a heritage policy, a reference group, gives people the opportunity to participate in that and to look at how heritage feeds into our other strategies and policies, but more importantly, given the debate we've just had about the strategic plan, I think is how heritage is going to feed into our future strategic plan. Because I see this is where heritage really comes into its own. Burnside has heritage conservation zones, it has heritage items on its register, and we need to be clear when we have our overarching strategy for the next 10 years what this council's position on heritage is. And this reference group is a perfect opportunity to do some extra work in that space by those who are particularly interested in this matter. When this report comes back, administration will tell us whether we should actually open this to members of the community as well who are interested in heritage, so we can then look at whether this is just an in-house group that is comprised of elected members and administrative staff, or whether there is it's a wider net. So I hope you support this. I feel that it's long overdue to bring heritage up to this level, and I seek your support.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are you seconding this?
Yes, I'll second it. I think this is an excellent motion. An example would have been tonight we would have had the an association, Heritage Association, involved, for example, in the Soldiers Memorial Avenues, which is what I read here on the running sheet. But also what I wanted to do tonight is amend the original motion, but I've got an opportunity to do that here. This heritage policy that we've read today, read here, is not referring to oral history. It assumes physical history, and that's the way I read the current policy. So I'd like to broaden the scope of heritage to include the meaning to include physical assets as well as intangible assets, the stories of the community. So I think I'll ask Councillor Lemon if she can clarify if she means heritage means oral history as well as physical assets.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to support this motion. I think, firstly, I'd like to congratulate the staff on drafting the policy and developing it, Aaron and whoever else was involved, and for understand lots of elected members' input. I think it's really clear. It talks about how we are committed to celebrating our city's history and heritage and to maintain and enhance its unique historic character. I think we have to go right back to that, back to the basics, because I think in some respects we've lost sight of that. We're battling against a lot of development opportunities that are going on around us, right, left and centre, but I think this at least gives us a premise to work from so that all of our operations and business recognises the need to be aware of our heritage and to manage that accordingly in our operational and business activities. So I also believe that the reference group, and I think this is a brilliant suggestion, Councillor Lemon, a heritage reference group is a really great idea to have a brains trust and a reference group to actually look at key heritage matters and as well manage and focus on the ones that we've got. So I hope everyone will support this. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I totally support this. It's not a subcommittee, but a reference group. Is that right? So it wouldn't come under our authority. However, I think that if here you get to advocate for yes or no, you don't get to advocate for anything more complicated than that in 5 minutes or the opportunity to really go and pursue other ideas. So I think that there are a lot of people in this chamber who are incredibly passionate about heritage and also people in our wider community. And I think that the ability to go and open that up and have some input there is fantastic. So I love the idea. I'd like to see some more subcommittees, but I think this is a very good step in the right direction. So I'm more than happy to support this.
Councillor Cornish.
Yes, I fully support this motion as it stands. With heritage under such threat by the state government at the moment, I think whatever this council can do to protect heritage as much as possible with the reference group, it's a great idea, so I fully support it.
Can I just add that Councillor Cornish, you did have a suggestion earlier to add, and I think that is something that maybe should be highlighted in terms of going back to the heritage that goes beyond white settlement heritage. And I'm hoping that whatever the reference group is that is established will consider that as part of their role.
I'll move that as a separate motion.
You move that as a separate? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Cornish. I don't have anyone else on the screen, so I'll go back to the mover of the motion, who was Councillor Lemon.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank everyone for their input and their support. Thank you very much. I failed to say earlier on, but I will say now that I see that a lot of what this group will do is actually look at things like contributory items and look at things like the implications of the new planning legislation and how that will affect us here in Burnside. I see that as quite a big thing, and I think it's not just things like buildings. I think we're looking at, widening roads. Well, what's going to happen to the bluestone curving? So we can look at that sort of stuff. And if we are looking at bluestone curving, there is somebody that we must have on that group, whose name I won't mention, but we all know who that person is. In terms of the oral history, heritage and history, they're intertwined, but they are different. But again, the group can actually decide for itself whether it picks up oral history. If it picks up Aboriginal issues, and we're looking at going back beyond white settlement here, and I think that's a good thing to do, we would be picking up oral history. And I think that in these days, and in NAIDOC week, which it is this week, and I did actually spend some time learning Pitjantjatjara, but I can't remember any of it quickly offhand, and I'd love to be able to know something. But I think that in NAIDOC week, I think we should, in Burnside, put our heritage reference group, put its mind to what was here before and how do we acknowledge that, and in acknowledging that, how do we stretch forward a hand of reconciliation? I think these are very important things for us to consider. So thank you for your support.
Right, those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Carried unanimously. We move on to the Dulwich Village Precinct for 13.4. And Councillor Henschke.
Thanks. I've
Giving it to Councillor Cornish.
Yes, I've got an alternative motion for this one too, which will come up on the screen. So it is that the report be received and that businesses in the Dulwich Village be surveyed within the next 12 months to ascertain their desire for a master plan being developed for the Dulwich Village, and that a report of the outcomes of the survey be presented to Council. So I completely understand with the administration in terms of, there are a lot of strategic documents that haven't been prepared yet, but this project, I think the can be kicked down the road a little bit further, and maybe we actually do that first step and ask the local businesses, would you like this in the first place? Certainly there've been, King William Roads highlighted at the moment as those sort of aspects do appear. But it just might be a smart move to start including that conversation with them. So in developing this motion, I did speak with the administration about it, and they were more than happy to do it, and it might include actual verbal conversations with all the business owners down there to get a bit more of a sense of what they're looking for at this early stage, if they are looking for anything like that. So I hope you support the amendment to the motion to actually go out and ask the question to begin with, I'll put that to the floor.
Councillor Henschke, you wish to second?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wish to second this. And before I amend it slightly, it's a minor wording, I'd just like to say I'm really glad to see this here again after trying to get it up in the budget bid process. Sadly, it didn't make the grade back in May, June. I think we had a lot of other competing budget bids at the time, but this is really important. We have got the federal government pumping millions of dollars into intersections on the corner of Greenhill Road, Portrush Road, Fullerton Road, Kensington Road, Glen Osmond Road. And why? Why are they doing that? Because it's just chock-a-block. We have got bottlenecks constantly. Pardon? That's why. So we have got a problem in the Rose Park Toorak Gardens ward. Can you imagine being surrounded by all of that arterial pressure? So where is it going to go? The least paths of least resistance will be through Grandview Grove, Stewart Road, you name it. And I'm very glad we're getting more data to make decisions. And Aaron and the team have done a great job putting out some speed traffic counts, proving that Stewart Road, Dulwich Road are primary roads, 3,000 to 5,000 or 6,000 cars. I think the figures were close to about 4,500, 5,000. That's massive, and they're all flying down there, lovely. They love driving down these streets, cutting through from one arterial to another at the rate of 40 to 50 kilometres per hour, right in front of cafes, the boutique precinct that it's been known as. Well, it's not going to become a boutique precinct for much longer if people are going to be sitting there with car fumes all around them. What good are we going to do these businesses? So we need to make sure we help these precincts be sustainable over time. And the 30-year plan we know is going to densify the inner city zone. This is inner city zone. So we have to be proactive. And again, it didn't get into our budget bid. All we were after was $40,000 to get this moving along, but I respect that. And now we've got the chance to do a minimal exercise to engage with the residents and ratepayers, both businesses and residential, into the issues and opportunities that they see. I go out there and I ask these businesses, how's it going, what's happening? And it's always about traffic. It's always about people trying to cross the road between the pharmacy and the medical centres, because it's a very good hub for health services. And there are people struggling to cross the road, and people are flying down that street. So maybe one day this will become the Stockholm, you know, a pedestrian zone at 15 kilometres at an hour. I hope it does. I really do hope in the next 4 years that we do see this as an example precinct that we can replicate throughout the city of Burnside. We've got the McGill Village precinct, and we've got Burnside Village precinct. This is another beautiful precinct, and it's at risk. So the amendment I wanted to make here is just a very minor thing. It's just to put a / line in front of master planning, because that's a very can be quite abstract to some people. So just a / there to say master plan / issues and opportunities report, which would mean that when the administration goes out, the project managers engage with the residents and ratepayers, those pertinent people out there. They can document their issues and opportunities, as they said. And I've come across some really interesting stories, like one, the chemist owner, for example, has engaged with other businesses, you know, over the years, trying to sort out parking problems, but they've stopped. So it's a matter of engaging and together working out solutions, which can be quite minimal. But anyway, I do hope you support this for the Rose Park Terrace Gardens ward, and I'm sure there are lots of other opportunities throughout the city of Burnside for other precincts, which I know are equally deserving in the future.
Councillor Piggott.
Do I take it that the change that Councillor Henschke raised is not going in there? No, okay.
No, it should be.
No, you don't get to amend it unless you move an amendment.
I'll move an amendment, that's what I want.
But you seconded it.
Sorry, you've seconded, so you can't.
Don't you want a master plan?
Question for administration. As it currently reads, going out to the, through you, Mayor, as that currently reads, would it be able to pull in some of the things that Councillor Henschke has raised? Have we got the best of both worlds with, you know?
Through the chair, certainly in regard to speaking to some of the businesses in the area, we could ask them whether they have any current concerns, any areas they might like to see improved, and that may flag some of those issues around traffic and parking, if that is what they see as a concern.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. At the risk of being Mr. Deadline today, I feel that actually the mover perhaps should move that back to the next 6 months rather than 12. And I guess I come back to the budget. I think this would be, I support the motion. The report we have is that, you know, it's not necessarily something we're not really in a position to do right this minute. Councillor Henschke tried to get a budget bid up this year. I'd have thought if that was done in the next 6 months rather than the next 12, that would assist, or maybe it wouldn't, depending on the answer, I guess, but that piece of information would be relevant when we were considering next year's budget. So I feel it's more appropriate to do in the next 6 rather than 12. Now, that may happen anyway, but...
Council administration are happy with a 6 month.
So that's what the motion should say.
I'll take a variation later on then, maybe.
Take it now.
Councillor Davey, you're next to speak.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to support the motion, whether it's for 6 months or 12 months. I note the issues raised, and they sound awfully familiar. A lovely little area that's got, you know, nice shops and cafes and the odd physio or medical centre, and then traffic hurtling through the middle. I've got a couple in my area as well. One of the things that springs to mind for me is a 40 k per hour traffic speed limit. But I'm just throwing that into the mix to see what people might think of that. It certainly would stop people hurtling through at a great rate. But I also note, and will be very interested to see what the study brings back to us, but I also note that this is designed to feed into the strategic plan. Once we develop our strategic plan, this is one of the issues that is designated in paragraph 15 to feed into that. So I think it's all knitting together quite well, and it'll be very interesting to see what the initial report shows and then how we can feed that into strategic planning. Thank you.
Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Worship. My question is to the administration. I've heard Councillor Henschke talk about this issue on a number of occasions. She seems well across the issues. No doubt Councillor Cornish as well, you know, being in their ward and so forth, and no doubt they speak to the businesses already on a regular occurrence. My question is this going to tell us anything that we probably don't know already, especially the ward councillors?
Through the chair, we won't know until we ask those questions.
Precisely.
A little bit rhetorical. Okay, do you wish to speak any further, Councillor Carbone? You're still on
Not
the list.
really. I just suspect that we're going to find out what Councillor Henschke and Councillor Cornish can tell us already. So I'm happy to do it, but I see it as a bit of a waste.
Councillor Cornish.
I seek leave of the meeting, if I can, to make two variations to the motion as it stands, to change it to 6 months, which it has been, and to do master plan / issues, opportunities and issues report, which is just a terminology thing so that the local businesses understand what it's about rather than what a master plan is. So I do concede that that's effectively what we're sort of asking for anyway and what we'd be gathering. And I'm appreciative of, I shouldn't be talking to a variation, so I just seek leave of the meeting to do that.
No, I don't think there's any issues with those slight variations to the original motion, so I'm quite happy for those to go ahead. I have no one else here on my screen, so are we happy for this to go back to the mover of the motion, which was Councillor Cornish? You wish to speak? No. Right, those who are in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Those against are carried unanimously. Can I seek someone to move a 10-minute recess? Thank you, Councillor Davis. Seconded by Councillor Henschke. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, unanimously carried. 10-minute recess and begin at, according to my watch, 10 past. Is that one there? 7 past.
You did what, sorry? You did?
No, actually, maybe.
Talking too much.
It's 2 lines and they both do. I did nothing, I turned it on, but it's okay, let me just see. And I will think so.
Oh, for goodness sake. It's been doing it all evening.
I know, I was here, I did.
And there were no other lights on. You touched the...
Okay, now moving on to 13.5, the deed of variation. Is there someone who wishes to withdraw this for discussion? Councillor Piggott, please. You're happy to move it? All right, no one has anything to add. Seconded by Councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we move on to the Kensington Gardens Reserve South East Corner Redevelopment Prudential Report and Project Plan, and I need to read this again. I would like to remind members that although this report is provided in the public arena, there are a number of previous reports and resolutions previously considered in confidence. If Council starts to discuss matters which have been retained in confidence, we will need to resolve to exclude the public and continue the debate as a confidential item. I believe that is Councillor Davis. You wish to move?
Great. This is exciting. So this has been a project that's been ongoing for about, 4.5 years now, I think. So it started off with consultation, with an initial consultation, and then a number of master plans, and then that was agreed in the last council. And throughout that entire time, the Becky's Lake difficulties and the difficulty with that has been raised by residents and also the clubs about its current condition. And it's always been seen as a lost opportunity for Kensington Gardens Reserve. And so tonight I'm absolutely excited to see this report come back, and also the support from the federal government as well to help us get over the line. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm incredibly excited about this. This would be a huge undertaking by the city and represent a massive improvement to, I would say, is the jewel in the crown of Burnside. Some might say it's Hazelwood Park, but I think it's Kensington Gardens Reserve. And it would have a massive impact on that. Now, currently Becky's Lake suffers from, I call it a prison for ducks. It has high concrete walls with a steep slope and a fence around the outside, where, there was a couple of young boys who almost drowned there. And it's a dangerous place. It's a putrid water body which is filled with nutrients from ducks. It's got heavy metals and hydrocarbons in it, and bacteria, grow in that pond. That pond is meant to catch sediment, but its design doesn't really work in that when you have these large runoffs of rain, huge amount of sediment comes down, it essentially washes straight through and over the wall and straight into the Torrens River. And so it really doesn't serve as that purpose. It only serves to stop the trickle of silt that comes down, and that's mainly nutrient-based. The difficulty as well is that water couldn't be used for irrigation because of its poor quality, and it just absolutely stunk, especially in summer when it would dry out and become such an inhospitable place, and that smell would waft throughout the reserve. And I think the clubs it certainly gave that feedback of something that we could fix. And it's also a costly exercise to go and scrape that silt every number of years and go through and because on a number of years it has been contaminated, that silt, and it can cost up to a couple hundred. Well, I think it's $150,000. Correct me if I'm wrong. That it cost 1 year because it was deemed that silt had risen above a certain level of contamination as a result of its position. So there are huge problems there, including safety and environmental concerns, and also the on-flow going down the road. What this plan will see is that Kensington Gardens Reserve, Becky's Lake, will become a destination for residents across the city of Burnside. Having a look at places like Hazelwood Park with their pond structure and the way that residents can interact, and you can go up. And I remember there was frogs, those strange goomp frogs, and you can hear them. And that interaction with water as a child and as an adult is immensely powerful. What this project will deliver is obviously a new wetland, but so much more than that. We're looking at 2 gross pollutant traps to improve the water quality, which will also remove the level of bacteria in the water. It will there'll be a water bypass, so in large downpours, the water won't flow through it and over the wall to wreck the plants that you put in. There's a bypass as it comes through, so it spills over. There'll be a bridge with a viewing platform. There will be a large amount of work to an underground pipe, which is currently obstructing, it will obstruct the 8 new tennis courts competition-grade tennis courts with lighting that would go into that space, making that a premier location in Burnside for competitive hardcourt tennis. And the tennis club, my understanding is they've actually written a letter of support in favour of the project, and it would mean such a huge thing for their club, and it would also be available to our community. The community consultation around this over the last 4.5 years has been incredibly positive in terms of doing something, and I'm incredibly excited to finally be able to present that to council and have a finalised report. Finally, I would, fingers crossed, I'm hoping that this will get up, but this is a great value proposition for the City of Burnside for what we're getting in terms of the $3 million which was secured by our former member Christopher Pine and supported by James Stevens. I can't thank those two enough for their support for Burnside, and I know that Christopher and James were both there at the opening, and this is a great win for the City of Burnside in terms of the benefit that we will see for years and years to come. So I hope that you can support this motion. It's incredibly important for my ward and also the City of Burnside, and I hope that it will become a destination for years to come. I hope that you can support it.
Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Cornish?
No need to speak, thank you.
I have no one on the screen who wishes to speak. Oh, yes, I now do. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank mover and seconder and Aaron, who's before us again with another one of his projects. He's been a very, very busy man. Thank you for your report and for all the work that's been done to get this to this stage. I think it's a fabulous project, and I can't wait to see the wetlands in the reserve. They'll be absolutely magnificent. The one thing I'm worried about is that I think we're getting to the stage where we're over-committing the reserve to sports fields. We've got our rugby and our cricket and our tennis and bowls, and we've got so much. It's not alienated, but so much of the reserve is now dedicated to sporting activity that I am getting a bit worried that we're getting a bit out of balance in terms of maintaining the beautiful rustic park that it once was. So I trust that this project will manage that and manage those risks that we overdevelop the park and get out of kilter with the wonderful environmental heritage we've got there. The question I have is, as a result of this, we've lost quite a few of our big trees. I think there's 14 from memory in the project over the life of this project that's been developing. Are we going to replace any of those big trees as part of this program? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I know we're going to plant 250 little trees, but I want to see that we're getting back to some of our big eucalyptus trees.
Through the Chair, yep, absolutely. One of the initial deliverables for this project will be a tree management plan that will go into actually what kind of trees will replace, what size they'll be, where they'll be, etc. With the intent also linking it with our tree policies and our tree strategies and things like that as well. The number of trees that the project will impact is still being determined, but the tree management plan will certainly look at replacing and putting in suitable trees.
And follow-up question, can we have input into that plan? Will that be developed? Will we have the opportunity to have input into that?
Through the Chair, yes, we're happy to provide that to Council.
Thank you. I'd rather do that than move an amendment to the motion, but I'm happy if we're involved. Thank you very much.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is a significant capital project that we're undertaking here, and I noted in the Audit Committee that I'm a member of that we have had discussions about project management frameworks for our capital projects, and just wanted to ask Aaron if you could share with the Chamber where we're at with that, because those frameworks, especially applied to projects like that, mean that, in my mind, that we can even look for savings and a great opportunity to benchmark costs for all future projects. So we'll have some great lessons learned. So can I perhaps ask you to share with the Chamber this project management framework? Thank you.
Through the Chair, yes, we're in the processes of finalising that project management framework. It's been worked internally. It's obviously heavily informed by the internal audit, and obviously, which obviously went through the audit committee. And this particular project, the governance structure that's being recommended, will follow the recommendations of that audit and what will be in the project management framework.
Councillor Jones.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? Am I being asked to vote to spend $6.1 million tonight?
That's actually part of the confidential report, so we have to discuss this at a later point in time. The answer can be given without any acknowledgement of the dollar sign.
Through the Chair, the officer's recommendation at the moment is around Council receiving the prudential report, adopting the project plan, around project updates and around administration looking for additional opportunities to offset funding. The funding for this project has already been allocated for the current year through the business plan and budget process and is also outlined in the long-term financial plan.
I do apologise for that. My issue is we haven't even had a workshop on this, and it's fine for the people who've lived it for the past 4 to 8 years, but I'm new, I've got nothing on this. We've had more on, we had a workshop on biodiversity, and we've not had a workshop on this, and you'd thought we could have squeezed one in for something quite so important. So I just asked that question, if I could. Like, why didn't we have a workshop, given the significance of the project?
There was a site visit as well.
Through the Chair, this current report has been produced in response to the last council resolution made, which was on the 12th of December 2017, which asked for this prudential report to be done and for the detailed design to be done for the southeast corner. We haven't currently got a workshop scheduled in for this particular topic, but if that was something that council wished us to do, we can certainly book that in.
You can come back with a further question later if you wish.
I just think it was 18 months ago.
No, please don't answer. Sorry. Councillor Piggott, please.
Just picking on Councillor Jones, I mean, that's, I think that's I can understand where that's coming from, and one of the things about it is that the project actually, albeit was December 17, was actually quite well advanced at that point. So where we're at now, in my understanding, is that the detailed work, which was approved back then to do, has been done. Funding has been sought and got from the federal government to take a large chunk of the project, and we, as a council, we need to do things like prudential reports that need to, which we are party to, which basically go to the point of whether things have been done right and whether the council can afford it, and you know, based on that is the point we're at. So we're sort of reasonably late on in the last quarter, I suppose, and you know, it is a issue, I suppose, with a change of council with people like yourself. So I see what you're saying. I have been living this project for a while, and the reason it did get a substantial go-ahead back in 17 was really it did come out of quite a lot of work, a lot of backwards and forwards in the master plan exercise for Kensington Gardens Reserve. It is a fantastic reserve. It is strong in sporting clubs. There's no question about that. But the main play that came out of that, well, certainly one of them anyway, but probably the main one was Becky's Lake. And Becky's Lake has been a problem for some time. And the reason this project got such support back then, and deserves it now, is it does address a couple of things for me. It sorts out the Becky's Lake, which has been a costly and not particularly positive part of the park, and it also sorts out the southeastern corner, which in a park that is fabulous for all sorts of reasons. The southeastern corner, which the wetlands now will occupy, has been quite a weakness in that it was largely, certainly there were trees, but at ground level it was actually quite a disappointing area. Certainly not an area that residents would actually use. The tennis club has sort of got wrapped up into it a bit, and so a bonus, I guess, is the upgrade of their facilities, because two of the courts sat in the way of having a wetland, which is actually only the smallest size we're going to get away with to do the stuff we want to do. So that's where it's at. The community consultation was very strong around Becky's Lake, and there were a number of things that we looked at, but this rose above, and it rose above to the point that we were, through the efforts of administration, able to get a significant chunk of federal money for it. So it is late in the day. I think, time over again, a workshop to explain that more fully than what the report does, I think would have been appropriate. But we do sit very much at the end of the process, and the motion talks about now going ahead with it, but continuing to investigate the funding of it, and which I assume also means sort of controlling the costs of it as well. So it's very much something that the council, I feel, we should support.
Councillor Henschke.
Oh, thank you. Mayor, I had another couple of questions and I didn't ask, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. Just on general terms, in terms of dollars and time, and at the moment, is there a plus or minus on dollars?
Excuse me, can't do dollars, and that would have to be later on for the discussion.
So a general question would be, is the plan that we've been asked to adopt the project plan, is that project plan a execution project plan, ready for execution?
Through the chair, yes, short answer is yes.
Okay.
That's the next steps of that. Correct.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question. The next question was, this project does have a measurable benefit or improvement on the discharge of water that would end up in the River Torrens?
Through the chair, again, short answer is yes. I'm not a technical expert to be able to explain what that is, but it's basically about reducing the level of pollutants that are coming in from the catchment from Model Park, which includes biological pollutants, chemical pollutants and that sort of thing. So the intent of the wetland is to reduce those pollutants.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got two pretty basic questions. One is the wetlands picture. It looks beautiful, lovely, rocks, etc. Am I the only person who fears safety issues here? Because I've seen other wetlands around and they're sort of higher or they have more fencing. I do consider that's a bit dangerous for young children, plus the dogs are going to swim in it, but particularly for the child safety aspect. So that's one that it just worries me, looking at that. Beautiful, but worrying.
Yep, through the chair. Certainly, I mean, the illustration you see there is obviously a concept illustration done in the early stage, and what they're doing through the detailed design now is going through exactly those questions of safety. So some areas there will be some fencing in some areas. There will be also areas that are, I guess, where there's plants and the landscaping
Right.
positioned in a way that you can't sort of access the
So there'll
wetlands.
probably be more fencing.
Yeah, and
Works.
other areas will have the wetland. I think one of the beauties about the wetlands, it is a very gradual slope into the wetlands.
Right,
which will
that
make
sounds good to me,
so
thank you.
nice.
My other question,
Sorry, can
Oh.
I just add into that as well? Through the chair, we had a catch up with the designer last week who told us that the design has been done in line with best practice for urban wetlands. That's the terminology, I believe. They're also undertaking safety and design workshops, which is where they basically do a risk assessment around all safety aspects and make sure that there are appropriate designs and protocols in place to deal with those.
thank you. My other one is, will there be any council input into renovating the Kensington Garden Cricket Club building, which is pretty decrepit?
I think that's a different issue
different
altogether.
issue, so it
I
doesn't really
appreciate
go
the
with all
question, but
the rest.
it doesn't really go with this southeastern corner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other names? Councillor Jones.
Can I just ask a question? I don't want to hold things up unnecessarily, so I'm happy to vote for this motion, but can we have a workshop, please, to explain the background? So I don't feel that I have just voted for something just because Councillor Davis spoke so passionately about why we should vote for it.
Can I suggest that it doesn't happen until after the 3 missing elected members who are all
Yeah,
new
no, sure.
happens?
Sorry, through the chair, yes, a workshop can be arranged.
Anyone else wishes to speak? Yes, Councillor Davis, you ready to sum up? Or
Yes,
you-
please, thank you. Another point that, another point I would like to mention is that, if you have a look at things like the new Constable High Memorial Gardens and also the success of Marialta, an important part of this plan and this proposal is the nature play element that children will get from it. So, I as an adult went down to the Marialta playground, and the way that they've incorporated nature and play into that is such an amazing thing. And I think kids respond to that really, really well. And as part of that, there will be a significant upgrade to the nature play within the area, which I think will add to the to making this a destination for families from around Burnside and even wider from that. I completely agree with Councillor Davey when she talks about the sporting presence on the reserve. It is certainly a highly functional reserve, a highly utility-driven reserve. And one of the problems that I've always seen is that barrier of Becky's Lake there essentially cuts off about 1/6 of the reserve. So that entire back section is met with a barrier of unfriendliness and putridness that is very difficult to actually navigate through and around. And as you can see in the design, there's actually a bridge connecting those two spaces. So what I'm hoping is that not only will that become a destination for people or walkers or even families who are participating in sport, but the rest of that behind area will also become more accessible to residents who wish to utilise it. And we can really make use of that 1/6% of the reserve and maximise the space that we do have there, which is currently cut off. If you have a look at, in terms of trees, I think that is a really important point to emphasise, is that this master plan, the emphasis on trees is massive. And if you have a look at page 127, underneath the tennis courts, you'll see little dotted black lines. And those are the trees that will go in this. And the bigger the circle around them, the bigger the tree. And what the administration I know have paid particular attention to is a very large, significant tree. You can see it in the middle of the 8, in that middle section off to the left, is a very large, significant tree, and a number of it around it. And so the administration have worked incredibly hard to preserve that tree and also the significance of it. And there are a number of smaller trees that would look to be moved and then replaced. And you can see that the new trees highlighted in a lighter green than the darker green. And if you have a look at the tree presence after this master plan is delivered, I think it'll have an absolute huge visual impact for the reserve. The water quality, in my view, the Torrens River is awful as a resource for the state. It is a stagnant pond similar to Becky's Lake, and we contribute to that. That silt that comes from up in the hills from runoff goes straight into that river system, And what it does is it turbulates the water, and light can't pierce it anymore. So that sand and muck and stuff means that sunlight can't go and disinfect it. One of the great benefits of the wetlands is that it's much shallower, light can pierce it generally, and that UV light will have a huge impact on the water quality, as well as the plants there that will sit there and absorb those nutrients, which often comes with silt. They'll eat the nutrients there. So it'll have a huge impact on the water quality. And so I'm definitely glad to see that. In terms of safety, open bodies of water, I understand the reticence. We talk about pools. There's a lot of emphasis placed on pool safety. My understanding of what's dangerous is when you have very steep walls that then people can't get back up off. So it's getting out of the pool that makes it dangerous. Essentially, children won't kill themselves. They're pretty good at that. Humans have come up with that mechanism. Generally, they don't. They judge their own safety level, and what it will be is a gradient into it. So that doesn't pose a safety, same as Hazelwood Park or other areas. It doesn't pose that same safety threshold, same as the ocean or things which have a gradual incline into it. So look, in summing up, I'd like to thank again Christopher Pine and James Stevens for their support in this in terms of the funding, and hope that you'll support this. This will be a major development for Burnside, and something that's been ongoing for 4.5 years, and I think a workshop is definitely good as those designs are further finalised, and I hope that you can support it.
Those in favour? Carried unanimously. I just want to reinforce the comments made about the work that's been done on this report. And I certainly have been part of that 4-year struggle to get this done, and it's quite an achievement to have got to this point, and I think it's an excellent report. I also want to, when we were in Canberra, we were told by the National Congress that whenever we had the opportunity to thank politicians for giving us money, we should do it and do it and do it again. So I'm doing it again, even though Councillor Davis has already stated it, because we would like more if the opportunity arose. And I think this is a significant project for Burnside, and I commend your vote in the way that you did tonight. We'll now move on. Apologies for my speaking. We're now moving on to subsidiaries. The first one is 14.1, East Waste. Do I have a motion to accept this report from Councillor Cornish? Thank you. A seconder from Councillor Piggott. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Nothing from Eastern Health Authority or Highbury Landfill. There is a report from Era Water. We have moved by Councillor Cornish, seconded by Councillor Davey. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Can I ask a question? Yes, you may ask a question.
Did Councillor Piggott attend the board meeting as the proxy? No. No.
Which?
Okay.
Sorry. No, we're now talking about Era Water.
Yes.
I know that Councillor Hughes attended.
Yes. I just thought Councillor Piggott might have gone.
Councillor Hughes went as the observer, because that was Mr. Vote's last meeting as our representative. So, but she did go as an observer to that meeting, and obviously she's not here to answer any questions. So we would have to wait until she returns.
Yeah, that's why I thought Councillor Piggott might have gone as the backup.
No, he didn't need to, because she was there not as a backup, but because she hasn't yet been. She is now officially the delegate.
Right.
But Jeff Vote was the delegate at that last board meeting.
Understood.
Okay.
So can we ask her about it next time?
You can't actually ask her. You can ask questions on notice, however.
Right. Okay.
Can I just also make a point that we think we should be writing to thank Mr. Vogt for his service over the last 2 years to that committee, because I think it is important that I have spoken to him personally and thanked him, but I think it should, can I have a motion that could come from the floor that we do that? Councillor Piggott, seconded Councillor Cornish, that we write to Mr. Jeff Vogt as our representative on that board for the last 2 years and thank him for the services that he has provided to this council. Yep. Okay with that? Did you get all of that? Sorry, I spoke very fast. Yes, sorry. Over the last 2 years. To thank him for the services as a member of the board. Sorry? Yes, Mr. Jeff Vogt. Yeah. I think it would be remiss of us not to thank him for that service. So can I have, we've got a mover and we've got a seconder. Those in favour of this motion, thank you. Carried unanimously. Mayor's report, item 15. I just wish to add just one little, it has actually been put on the public record on the website, but there's the omission of the name of the Lions Club, and it was the Lions Club of Glenside, the handover dinner I attended, and that is a significant club for us that supports this council, particularly, of course, the fundraising they do through the bookshop. They raise an enormous amount of money, and of course they are the people who have given us $80,000 towards the development of the Conningham Street men's shed that they are particularly focused on. So I just wanted to make sure that we did recognise them. It missed being in this statement, but I think it's really important that we do recognise the amazing work that they do and the incredible contribution that they have made, not only to the men's shed, but to providing buses and cars and Eastwood Community Centre, all sorts of things that they have contributed to and have worked and continue to work amazingly well, apart from all the international global projects that they do. I don't want to leave Rotary out of it as well, because Rotary is fantastic as well. So moved. Thank you. Seconded. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Okay, reports of members, delegates and working parties. Is there anyone who wishes to add anything that has been omitted from the report that's tabled? Councillor Piggott?
I do omit it because I didn't send it through, I'm sorry about that. But I attended a special board meeting of East Waste on the 1st of July. Thanks.
I'll add something too, I'll break from tradition. That I met with staff, because I won't name them.
No, you're not allowed to under the present motions.
Correct, we might need to fix that actually. I met with staff to discuss the Kensington Gardens proposal.
Did you get that? Okay. Councillor Carbone, you wish to add?
I better jump in. So I attended the Cedar Woods opening. Cedar Woods opening of the new Glenside estate.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got something quick, and hopefully I can move a motion that Council notes the following correspondence that I received on a text message early today. Dear Mayor and Councillors of Burnside, thank you and your staff for setting up the Burnside photo competition. For the Mayor and photographer judge the competition and giving out prizes. I was delighted to win the 13 to 18-year-old category for my photo titled Catapult. Thank you to the Council for these opportunities for young people. Stuart Vass. And I hope you can incorporate them in the minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cornish. I do remember that particular photograph well. It was the leaf with a little blob of water on it, and his description was that when you let go of the leaf, the water would catapult into space. There were significant stories being told in those photographs, and I thank those members who were able to come on Friday night who did attend that event. It was, I think, a very big event and very important in the lives, and we had lots and lots of children there, which was wonderful, and thank you for the staff who organised it. I have formally sent them an email to thank them, but those who are here tonight, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you again.
So, happy to move that?
Yep, move, seconded, Councillor Turnbull. All those in favour? Right, carried unanimously. Yep. Now we move into other business, any other business, sorry. Okay, now we move into confidential items, and we have to read this one, 19.1. Someone has to read this, or do I read this one? Okay. Pursuant to section 92 of the Local Government Act 1999, the Council orders that all members of the public, except the elected members of the City of Burnside, the Acting Chief Executive Officer, the Acting General Manager Corporate Development, the Acting General Manager Urban and Community, the Governance Officer, Principal Executive Officer, Strategic Projects and Planning Manager, and the Acting Group Manager People and Innovation be excluded from attendance at the meeting of item 19.1. Kensington Gardens Reserve South East Corner Redevelopment Prudential Report and Project Plan. Council is satisfied that, pursuant to section 93D of the Act, the information to be considered, received and discussed is commercial information of a confidential nature, not being a trade secret, the disclosure of which would reasonably be expected to prejudice the commercial position of the person or corporation which supplied the information or confer a commercial advantage on a third party, and to do so would be contrary to the public interest pursuant to section 93D of the Act. In addition, the Council is satisfied that the information to be received contains information relating to tenders for the provision of services or the carrying out of works for the Council pursuant to section 93K of the Local Government Act 1999. Further, the principle that the meeting should be conducted in a place open to the public has been outweighed in the circumstances because of the public interest generally in maintaining confidentiality in the tender process. In addition, the Council needs to maintain confidentiality in this point in time, as it would face a commercial disadvantage if the cost information contained were made public, with the commercial position of the Council being prejudiced. So, by the time I've read all of that, I think everybody's gone. Is that right? Sorry, we still need